difficulties we may encounter. City Club is an organization that is dependent on ticketed event revenue. So to continue this programming, I'm asking you all to donate today. If every viewer donates $5 today, we would reach our goal and be able to continue offering free programming to keep democracy alive. Donate now by texting support City Club, one word, support City Club, to 44321. Again, support City Club, one word, to 44321. I also want to encourage folks to engage in the conversation online as if we were in a room together, perhaps even my living room. Send us your questions and comments online by emailing at questions@pdxcityclub.org, or engage with us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook using @PDXCityClub or hashtag CityClubDebate. You can also use the YouTube comment section below. Whether you ask a question, share the link with a friend, or just watch the debate to become informed, all of us at City Club want to thank you for participating today. Thanks also to our sponsors, SEIU 49 and The Standard. Democracy must press on. In fact, we have a number of important online events coming up. April 3rd, State of the County with Deborah Kafori. April 8th, City Council Position 4 debate. April 17th, City Council Position 2 debate. April 28th, City Council Position 1 debate. May 1st, Metro District 5 debate. May 8th, May Ballot Measure Forum. And mark your calendars and subscribe to our YouTube channel today, youtube.com/PDXCityClub. All right. Now, please join me in welcoming today's candidates for mayor: Ozzie Gonzalez, Sarah Iannarone, Teressa Raiford, and Ted Wheeler. In a moment, each candidate will have 2 minutes to introduce themselves. We dive into our question, and then we'll dive into our questions for the day. Each question has about 60-second time limit for candidates, with no time for rebuttal so that we can get to all of your questions. Each candidate will also have 2 minutes for closing statements. One of the benefits of virtual debating is that we, the moderators, that's including myself, we have the power to mute a candidate if they go over that time, but we really don't want to do that. That's super uncomfortable for everybody. So what I would love to see happen is that when I chime in to let you know your time has expired, please be responsive to that. I want to thank City Club for allowing me to craft and ask questions that I know voters care about and are interested in. So let's get started. The speaking order was predetermined ahead of the time, and first joining us is Sarah. Sarah, will you please share with us your opening statement?
Well, thank you very much, Sorelda. It's so exciting to be here with you virtually. And thank you to City Club and all of our sponsors, X-Ray FM and SEIU, for hosting us here tonight. I know that all of you are out in your homes, most likely sheltered in place, going through the same thing, no matter where you are in our city relatively. Some of us have it a little easier than others, but it's a little nerve-wracking coming to you from this corner, actually, of my bedroom, where I generally sit and read books, over here in the Mount Scott-Arleta neighborhood, where Foster Road meets 82nd Avenue. This is where I raised my daughter. She spent a lot of time at the Mount Scott Community Center and opened a small business almost 14 years ago here, a restaurant, and unfortunately they closed 2 weeks ago due to the epidemic. So first of all, and I want to say a great thank you to Mayor Ted Wheeler. This is a hard time to have a debate about what we would do differently. He's operating in times that we haven't seen in probably a century. And so thank you, Mayor Wheeler, for all you're doing for our city at this time. I hope that we can have a meaningful conversation about the future, and how we can actually all come together to support you in the challenging work that you're doing. I also want to let Portlanders know that I feel this is a great opportunity for us. Oftentimes when we are in the middle of a crisis, the best parts of us come through. And what I have seen in the past 3 weeks, 2 weeks, last week, even today, is Portlanders coming together side by side to do exactly what we do best, which is work together to make Portland the very best place it can be. And what I'm particularly seeing is most of us, the most affluent of us, the most privileged of us, working to make sure that those without are being taken care of. And so as we move forward, I would really like to make sure that what we're thinking about is a carefully crafted pathway, not only through this recovery, but into the future that Portlanders want to see, because we know that the things that are truly sustainable are the things that are still working, whether we're in crisis or in good times. And so if we focus on that, and if we focus on making sure that Portland is working for even the least affluent among us, even in the hardest times, then we'll be able to call ourselves a truly sustainable city. I'm looking forward to a wonderful conversation tonight. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Sarah. Ozzie, would you like to go next?
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Ozzie Gonzalez, and thanks to everyone joining from their own homes or wherever they are self-isolating today. I am running for mayor of Portland, Oregon, because I love our city. My wife and I, of 20 years, have raised our children here. They are products of the Portland public school system. And now, just as they have been raised in a city where we have enjoyed the outdoors, the wonderful food scene, the wonderful art scene, my wife and I, as involved as we've been, we're seeing the changes that everybody out there has been experiencing over the years in how livability has changed. I've been involved in my community in many ways. I serve on the TriMet board currently on the Hispanic Metropolitan Chamber and the Oregon Association of Minority Entrepreneurs Advisory Board. Whether it's the business community, the arts community, the planning community, the design community, I have been involved over the years. And I have a background in environmental science and architecture. And the reason I'm running for mayor is because I believe that we have an opportunity to regain that livability that we are all watching wither before our eyes. And I believe that we can accelerate our commitment to sustainability, and that we should accelerate our commitment to sustainability. I believe we have everything within our capacity now to make that possible. And I want to deliver on that promise as your leader. I am the common sense, get things done candidate, Ozzie Gonzalez, and it's a pleasure being here today.
Thank you, Ozzie. Ted, would you like to go next?
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for being here, and thank you to the City Club of Portland for sponsoring this tonight. My name is Ted Wheeler, and I'm currently your mayor. I would like to start off by thanking the people of Portland for their seriousness and the urgency with which they've approached the COVID crisis. I know this is really difficult, but I appreciate everybody's resilience and coming together to help reduce the spread of COVID. I especially want to thank people for getting out there and banging on your pots and pans and cheering for our frontline workers during this crisis. I know the people in our hospitals, the people in our grocery stores, the people making deliveries and other critical workers, they feel your support and they appreciate it. So on to the business for tonight. I'm actually seeking to be the first mayor this century to run for re-election. And like you, I have a stake in this community. I was born and raised here. I've raised my daughter in this community. I'm a proud product of the Portland public education system. And I feel really privileged to be the mayor of such a vibrant, livable, and innovative city as Portland. Now, we know Portland has issues, the homeless crisis, housing affordability issues. Our economy is one of the strongest in North America before the COVID crisis, but not everybody was participating in that economic prosperity. And of course, we're working hard to protect the environment, engage on climate action. And there's always the challenge of making sure that our government is as effective and responsive to the needs of the community as possible. I'm proud of the progress that I've made so far, but I didn't do any of it alone. It's about bringing people together to get things done. I've worked well with my colleagues on the city council. Not everybody has historically. I brought in effective and visionary department leaders. They work together as a team, and we've created very important relationships in the community to get things done. I want to build on that momentum, and I'm asking you for your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Next up is Teressa. Raiford, please.
Hey, thank you, Sarita. I just wanted to say, first of all, the Stacy Rice box with the counter is not working. And if you know, yeah, still, it's just on red. I don't know when the 2 minutes is up or anything. I don't know if everybody else noticed that, but it's just been on red continuously.
So I think your camera may be freezing because it's sequencing through. So right now it's on green for you, and I want to know if Stacy can reset that for you so you can get the time.
Thank you. I didn't want to cheat the time, and I didn't want to get cut off.
No problem.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And you can just tell me when to start.
Please go for it.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
All right, so my name is Teressa Raiford. I'm thankful to be here. Thank you for the moderators. Thank you for everybody working hard to bring this opportunity of information to our homes. Thank you for, first of all, to all of our frontline workers, people in the grocery stores, everybody in the hospitals, all of the home care providers that are really putting out a lot of energy to take care of our housed-in community. I just wanted to say that as a Portlander and someone who's been here 4 generations now, we've been through a lot. You know, we've seen a lot, we've come through a lot, and we can make it through what's going on right now. But it's going to take a really good relationship with City Council. It's going to take civic participation on a level that we haven't seen since really the last decade. The momentum that general public brought to City Hall to be engaged on issues that matter to most of us. A continuance of that actually does mean that we have to shift the paradigm in regards to our leadership. And as a community organizer and someone who sat on board, someone who runs a nonprofit that was listed as Portland's best nonprofit by Willamette Weekly readers, someone who's in the community and has a legacy of my family's commitment to building community, I see that the biggest thing that's missing is us being accountable to the people that we have systemically marginalized. And when I say systemically marginalized, no one is born to live in poverty. No one is born to live and to deal with illiteracy at a level where they're not able to have access to, you know, a good basic education or a good basic job or housing. But our systems allow for those type of ineffective inequities to happen to people. And if we haven't seen anything else from what's happening now, is the regard of people and their determination to be engaged. People have petitioned the city, they've petitioned our local government and our national government to make changes and to demand those changes with a transparent government and accountability. And that's what I'm running with my campaign. I'm running for accountability and transparency. I'm known for demanding audits because of the advocacy that I do in our community. I had to streamline that process through opening up a legal referral service in Northeast Portland, where I grew up, right down the street from the school and the neighborhoods where I grew up. And I'm hoping that through this campaign that we're able to do so much more by bringing in more community through changing the dynamics of the way that we center government.
Okay, Teresa. And so that's your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. So now we're going to get into some of the formal questions. All right. So these questions are going to be open to each of you, but I'll say your names to prompt you to respond along the way. And if you need for me to restate a question, don't hesitate to ask. That is not a problem. So the first question is about the stay-at-home policy, which everyone has already referenced at least once. We're all trying to do our parts to flatten the coronavirus curve. As a person who loves people and human connection and generally likes to be free to move about the globe, the stay-at-home policy has been hard at times. My husband and I have instituted a variety of family activities to keep us all sane and generally cheerful. What are you doing to help balance this new social distancing norm that we're a part of right now? How are you coping? And let's start first with Teresa, please.
Well, I'm a community organizer, and I'm also an introvert, and a lot of people don't know that about me, my organized community. But what I've done in the time that I've had off from actually having to be in my office is that we've organized on social media to utilize all of our networks, which serve about 2.5 million people online, to promote resources and really mutual aid resources, and even to establish a petition to City Hall to ask for more stimulus support locally. Doing things like that helps me manage my time and still feel like I'm able to give back to my community, because again, sharing information as a community organizer, that's what helps us get to where we are now, where you see a diverse group of people running for a city position, where they want to be the public servant that people can count on, where they know that in times of need that they are building strategies that matter to most of us. So that's what I've been doing in my free time, looking out for people that need someone to know that they're there and may not just have access to the links online.
All right.
Somebody to show up.
Thank you so much. Ozzie, you want to go next? And just a reminder, if you're not talking, if you can mute your phone, it cuts down on some of the background noise for the person who is speaking. All right, Ozzie, go for it.
Thank you for saying that, Cirilla. Yeah, so in short, I've been acclimating and adjusting on many levels, from the campaign having to adjust to not being able to knock on doors and go outside, shake hands, just moving that campaign to more digital sources, of course, like everyone else, adjusting to that. But, you know, there's very real world things happening in my household, at least. My daughter was at U of O. That school is now all digital, so she's moved back in. So part of it was getting her settled back in, accommodating her transition. My son's now online. He's in PPS high school, so that's another transition. We've just been setting up his workspace, making sure that he's able to make that transition, and really trying to adjust to the new plan. My wife and I are both small business owners, so it affects our businesses differently. She's a doctor, and just getting masks and helping her get supplies for testing has been something that's been a focus for us. So, you know, between all of that, I'd say it's really a big transition process of really acclimating to the real world. And in the end, centering, because this is an opportunity to really focus on something we really need to do more of is focus on that ground and that center of home. So we're doing some of that as well.
Thank you. Ted, you want to go next?
Yes, thank you for the question. I think this is surreal for everyone.
Yeah.
There's, first of all, the reality that literally thousands and thousands of Portlanders, as we speak, are afraid that they're going to lose everything. There's obviously the public health threat, which is real, it is serious, and it's growing. But there's also the economic reality. A lot of people are afraid that they're going to lose their housing. They're afraid that they've either will or they've already lost their jobs. They're concerned about their economic prospects going forward. So I've spent a lot of my time focusing on those two issues. Number one, how do I lead in a time of crisis and focus first and foremost on reducing the exposure of the public to the COVID virus? And second of all, how do we work together to ensure both economic sustainability and long-term economic recovery for the city? And that's been all-encompassing for me for the last several weeks. We were early in, we declared a state of emergency. We immediately put a moratorium on evictions for renters. We brought together an economic task force that now has over 100 people from small businesses to large businesses to different sectors of our economy working together. We have actually created a $3 million resilience fund, so we're ahead of the state, we're ahead of the federal government. We're doing the kinds of things that we as a team need to do, as a city that we need to do, and as a community we need to do.
All right, thank you, Mayor Wheeler. Thank you. Sarah, would you like to go next, please? You're muted, Sarah. Yep.
Thanks for that. Although some people probably wish they could mute me all the time.
No.
You know, I got to say, Cyril, that this hit home so hard for our family with the closing of the family business. My ex-husband, my daughter are out of work. A lot of our neighbors are out of work. I lost my contract. So when you're talking about the people who are worried about paying rent, my loved ones, my neighbors, so many of us out of work, and the rent is due on Wednesday. And I'm actually worried about how we are going to staunch the bleeding for those folks, for the commercial people of commercial leases. We do not have a moratorium on commercial leases. And thinking about things like so many of our houseless neighbors who don't have water, hand washing water, drinking water, we've been setting up emergency water stations. So for people who are living out of tents in St. John's, we set up some emergency washing stations there. My campaign and I created these good neighbor cards, which we have been sharing with different campaigns all around the country. Actually, we got the idea off the internet and decided to print them and hand them out. And so candidates all around now are transitioning their campaigns even to be helpers as we're doing outreach. So we've been transitioning to make sure that we're reaching out to our volunteers to make sure they're needed, because we've been spending the last 7 months building a grassroots network. So making sure those people are mobilized to be helpers. We're in a housing crisis, and so thinking about making sure people can stay in place has been the focus for us. But
thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to spend more time on the COVID-19 pandemic, what all is happening nationally, locally, etc. But we're actually going to transition to homelessness, houselessness right now. This is a question for everyone, but Ozzie, I'm going to let you start with your response. And here's the question. There's a divide in our community about how to respond to houselessness and the houselessness and homelessness crisis, specifically around homeless camps and tents throughout the city and the impact the crisis is having on businesses in our urban core. How will you ensure businesses thrive given the homelessness crisis while honoring people's humanity? Ozzie?
Thank you for asking that. And it's a great way to phrase that, because therein lies the rub. We have to balance the humanity aspect with being able to actually address the issue. And right now, I don't think we have the right answer. So I want to be upfront. I think the clearest vision I have for where we need to get is to end random camping throughout the city. And the only way we can actually achieve that is by answering the question, so where could people go? Where could you go to meet your basic needs, take a shower, get a haircut, use a restroom, get mail, some of the basic things that can start building that stepping stone. I've actually been working with several organizations throughout the city that are looking at creating projects to serve folks that are on the streets today, to set up facilities, to work through permitting. And so I'm seeing a lot of the obstacles that all of these organizations are having. And I know that we can do a lot better. So I want to be working proactively with organizations, private businesses, neighborhood associations, and everybody willing to help to answer the question, how do we become effective? I've got a plan I'm publishing on my website that I'll be happy to share, and I'll be doing more in depth on this issue because it's so big and so important.
Thank you very much, Ozzie. Teressa, would you like to go next? And I think you're okay, perfect.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so Ozzie was right about the houseless issue, and I understand what you're saying about, what we have to do as a response. But one of the things that I do is I hang out and I do a lot of research. And the fact is that between our housing bureau and knowing how many people are already currently housed that are also marginalized and at risk, and also knowing that there are these long lists of people that have already done the application process, one of the things that I wish that our city could do is build a communication system so that at times like this, we're able to make an immediate and deliberate communication to those people on standby and address the needs that they have, because that's the front line access is our housing bureau to people that are not only housed in because they're aging or they're dealing with disabilities or they're living in poverty, but even people that are houseless that have been sitting on lists waiting for housing. When we're talking about getting emergency resources to people, a lot of those people are already in our systems. We just have to build those systems so that we're effectively generating and distributing resources directly to them, and in whatever way that we can, especially at a time like now.
Thank you.
With the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Sarah?
Thank you. It's such a complicated and important question, Sorilda. And I've spent an awful lot of time with folks who are unhoused. And I do not like the idea that we have to balance business prosperity with humane solutions. I don't think that they're necessarily in opposition. What we have is humans who are trying to meet their needs in a variety of ways, and we need to meet them where they're at. And I think the most important thing is to put human well-being and health and public safety first. And what we've seen, even over the last since 2017, when homelessness has risen 20% under the current administration, what we're seeing is an inability to meet the most basic human needs of people. Like I explained this week, we have people without drinking water, without access to latrines, without hand washing water. And I do think it's going to be incumbent on every Portlander to step up, using this crisis as a great opportunity to demonstrate some of the things I've been talking about, whether or not it's us putting out hand washing stations on our block or making sure that any food that we can spare is shared with our neighbors. I've proposed in my public safety plan a rethinking of public safety, because what we're seeing is more armed police officers out in the streets are not where we need to be spending our critical public safety dollars. What we need right now is community safety hubs where people could be going to get the resources that they need to survive. And that's what's going to equip them to be more able to move through the various levels of housing that we can provide as we move across the spectrum of affordability for those folks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Ted, please.
Cyrilda, before I begin, how much time do we have to answer these questions?
You have 1 minute.
Very good. So first of all, homelessness is a complex problem because there's so many different factors that cause homelessness. For some people, it's because they've been priced out of housing. Other people are escaping a domestic violence situation. Others still might have a drug or addiction issue. Others still might be living with a mental health issue. So it requires a multitude of different approaches. I believe we have the right partnerships. I think we're making the right investments and the right priorities. We invest with Multnomah County and others in prevention. Last year, 7,000 people were prevented from becoming homeless. We've opened new shelters. Over the last several years, we've doubled our shelter capacity. We've invested in transitional housing. We've invested in permanent supportive housing. We've connected people to addiction treatment and mental health services so they can get off and stay off the streets. We've redoubled our efforts on the chronically homeless. It requires all of these approaches. It requires a community-based approach, and it requires a step up in the investments that we're making to be successful. It's compassionate services, livability, and safety, and we're investing in all of those areas.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so the next question is about trust. As an elected official, you have to hold the trust and confidence of people who see the world differently from one another, from more light bike lanes to less bike lanes, less taxes to more taxes for specialty projects. The list goes on and on. How will you, or in your case, Mayor Wheeler, what do you believe you have done to earn the trust of people who see the world differently from one another and who want fundamentally different things for our city? How do you earn their trust? And I want to start first with you, Mayor Wheeler.
Well, the way you earn trust with people is you listen to them. You don't tell them what to do. You don't tell them how it is in their particular circumstance. You listen to them, their needs, their experiences, and what they want and expect from government. And I believe that we've been very effective in doing that across the board. When it comes to homelessness, we listen to people who are actually currently homeless, what services they need, what would help them get off and stay off the streets. When it comes to public safety, we created the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, so we could hear from frontline communities about what they wanted and expected from the police bureau. When it comes to housing issues, when it comes to the environment, when it comes to other issues in our community, we always engage with the public directly. And I think that's the most important thing we can do. And that's why when you look at the list of endorsements that I have, it reflects a broad array of communities that I personally don't have experience with, but they know I'll listen to them and I'll work with them and I'll make solutions that can actually address the problems from their perspective, not from mine.
Thank you. Ozzie, how would you go about earning the trust of people who see the world very differently? And you're going to have to be the mayor of all of those perspectives concurrently.
Thank you. Well, it's important to come from a place that recognizes that there's more than one way to see the world. My background of speaking 2 languages and living immersed in 2 cultures has taught me firsthand that there are concepts that I cannot even express in Spanish that I could in English, and vice versa. So I could be looking at the same object and have entirely different ways to talk about it and reference points. So that's just the beginning. And what that has taught me is that no matter what I believe, there's other ways to see the same thing. So I come at any issue, any conversation with that level of humility that when I'm listening, I'm actually accepting someone else's worldview and reality, regardless of whether we're going to agree, because that's not the point. What we need to build trust on is trusting that this world, the science of physics of life, mean we have to balance ourselves with nature. The natural tendencies of human beings mean that we are a social animal that really feels good when we do good for others, and we have to learn how to nurture that. So I trust humanity, I trust science, and I build a foundation of trusting those elements. We're all imperfect creatures, and so I walk into conversations validating other people's lived experience by accepting that that is what brings value to what they have to say, not whether we see the same thing from the same angle.
Thank you. Sarah?
Thank you.
You know, the biggest part of trust is putting your money where your mouth is. And one of the things that people know from me is that I speak very frankly and I'm accountable to my word. When I say something, you know that it's because I'm working from within the community, on behalf of the community, advocating for the most vulnerable, speaking truth to power, and consistently walking my talk. What I do, and what I often get dinged for, is sometimes calling out the hypocrisy of people who say that they are trustworthy or have earned the trust, when in fact they haven't. And what we've seen time and again from the current administration is a failure to actually walk the talk. We've seen it in the protest ordinances. We've seen it in the sweeps of the homeless. We've seen it in transportation. We've seen it in housing affordability. We've seen it in an inability to even adhere to campaign contribution limits that were voted in by 87.4% of voters have called for campaign contribution limits. And meanwhile, when it comes to things like climate action or protecting renters or standing up with workers who are organizing on picket lines to fight for fair wages, I'm there with them. And so I believe that by running a small donor grassroots campaign with nearly 2,000 donors at this point, by far the largest number of donors of any campaign, including the incumbent, this cycle, that we are building a widespread coalition where each of those people is invested and they know that I'm going to speak on their behalf when I am the mayor. And what that means is I won't be beholden to special interests when I am the mayor.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Teressa?
Thank you. Thank you for asking me that question. For 10 years, I've been a community organizer because my nephew was killed at the age of 19 in downtown Portland in gun violence. And one of the things that I've realized is that when you're organizing around an issue that's important to you, a lot of other people who feel like they've never been heard or that have had some kind of proximity to that same type of issue, they'll connect with you because of your allegiance or passion to make a social change happen. And I've seen that happen for the last 10 years. I've helped tens of thousands of people, not only organize, but also to have their voices heard. And with my energy and with my ability to organize, I've demanded audits. And I think that between getting those audits and the work and the sacrifice of organizing and activating and educating community on their position in regards to civic participation, I think that the outcomes of those audits vindicates a lot of the people who I have held and supported through my advocacy. And the next line of that, again, was setting up the legal referral service so that, again, when people come to you and they need accountability, they're seeking answers and they need a substantial support system that actually hears them and can make change possible. It happens within our legal system. And a lot of people that did not have access to that are the people that I've advocated for. A lot of people in our city do not know how to self-advocate. They don't understand the process of bureaucracy or how to engage with our city and our government. And that needs to change. I've watched to see the outcomes of when that does change, how that happens, and what we all benefit from. Thank you for that question.
You're very welcome. So, Sarah, you're going to be first up to respond to the form of government question. Last year, City Club released a report examining the commission form of government. The report recommended 3 things. 1, Portland must transition to a modified council manager form of government. 2, Portland must increase the size of city council. And 3, Portland must change how city councilors are elected, and a recommendation to switch to district-based elections. What is your opinion about each of these 3 recommendations?
We've looked at this in depth. And we're very grateful for the City Club's work on this front. My team has put forward actually a good government policy, and I encourage people to go look at that at sarah2020.com/good government. Because what we recognize is that we need a representative government that we can trust to serve everyone, including residents of East Portland, including communities of color. And what I want us to do is engage in a robust charter review process in 2021 that helps us look at not just the form of government that we use, but what are the systems by which we're electing our representatives? Do we need a mix of at-large and district representatives? Do we need a city manager? Do we need a strong mayor? I don't know that the City Club report is 100% where I'd like us to be, so I'd like us to put a little bit more community work into that through the charter review process so that we can be thinking not just of what's not working, but especially looking at it through the lens of this crisis and the climate disaster that we're facing. What governance systems do we need to shape to make sure that they're going to sustain us through the next half century, and beyond?
All right, thank you. Teressa. Teressa, would you like to go next?
Absolutely. I was going to say, I'm going to piggyback off of what Sarah said, because the charter review process, if we're talking about building a larger city government, or if we're talking about developing more and more diverse and inclusive and accessible engagement, this is one of the ways that our administration is looking at enhancing our community outreach. Going into those different communities in 96 neighborhoods, going to all the different particular demographics that have been othered and systemically, again, marginalized, and bringing them into the fold of developing what that accessibility looks like, what that framework looks like. That's something that's very exciting for our entire team, because we've been standing on the front line, not only asking for it from every elected official in the last 3 elections, but demanding it through our process of community engagement and the way that we build direct action through community action plans. So I think that, again, building that charter review into the first 4 years, making sure that we develop a practical and a very efficient and foundational, sustainable process that includes everyone's voices, and utilizing that to continue to evolve what Portland can do in order to move forward. That's what needs to happen.
Thank you, Teressa. Ozzie, would you like to go next?
I would be happy to. Thank you, Teressa. First of all, I will acknowledge, I appreciate the work that the City Club has put together with this, and I know that the Coalition of Communities of Color has also been affiliated with part of this process, and I want to acknowledge that it's really valuable to be able to put an idea on paper and on the table for us to really have a robust dialogue. So I want to acknowledge that that's a good place, and I've done just that as well on my website. In fact, there's a lot of alignment between the proposal from the City Club and what I've put up. But I also believe that it's neither my decision nor the City Club's to say this is what it needs to be. But I think we're at a perfect point right now to move into a charter review process, bring in some community voices, and be able to take this paper exercise that has been done to put an idea on the table and to really say, is this a baseline we can start discussing around? Because I do believe district representation is important. I think asking the question about the number, what's the right size of City Hall, is a fantastic question to be asking. And I do believe that the city manager position addresses some of the systemic issues in the way we're formed today. So I personally think those are some fantastic ideas to be putting on the table, but I would be the first to acknowledge, as a sitting mayor in a process that's changing the power systems, I would abstain from voting, and I would put that into the hands of a community process.
Thank you very much. Mayor Willer.
Well, let me be clear. First, I ran for mayor understanding that I'd be the mayor in a commission form of government. But I've worked with my colleagues, and I've worked with the bureau directors, and we've made the commission form of government work. We did it with the 311 system in customer service. We've done it with permitting by bringing all the permitting bureaus together. We're doing it with the budget. But let's be honest. Where we succeed in spite of the commission form of government, not because of it. So I am determined that I will be the last mayor to serve under this form of government. I've already called for the convening of the Charter Commission. I want to thank the City Club and the Coalition for their hard work on this. The League of Women Voters has also, they've also been engaged in this. I'd encourage us to bring all of these efforts under one process. I would prefer it to be the city review process, the charter review process, because it's not run by the City Council, it's run by the community. And there's no question we need to modernize our government. It's not just about representation, it's also about accountability, and it's about efficiency. Those 3 things are at stake, and we need a modern government. Our city's bigger, it's more diverse, and the issues are more complex. We need a form of government that can rise to those challenges.
Thank you very much. So we're going to stick with this question because, as you all know, Portlanders have voted 8 times on reforming city government, and each time the effort has been unsuccessful. What do you think it will take for the 9th effort to be successful? And what do you think the roles of mayor and city hall should be in moving that effort forward? And let's start with Ozzie.
Thank you. Well, I think we're in a very different moment today than we have been in some past years with regards to the level of engagement people are feeling for democracy. We're seeing firsthand right now how much we depend on having good leaders at the helm and how much we depend on those leaders to be looking out for the interests of all the people they represent. Because when they don't do that, we're having to pick up that slack. So I see, first of all, not just Portland, but the nation, more engaged in democracy right now at a level that we haven't seen. I'm thrilled to see our young people participating in a way that they haven't been in recent years to this level. So the level of attention around making sure that government works for us, I feel, is at a pitch that we have not felt in recent years. And the fact that we have this question being brought through a community process is indicative of just how I think different we are in positioning this for a different result this time.
Thank you. I'm keeping track of who goes first, just in case you're wondering what am I doing over here with my pen. All right, so next up, let's go with Teressa.
All right, do you mind repeating the question again? I keep getting a stop on my end.
No problem. So the question is that the city has, Portlanders have voted 8 times on reforming city government. Each time it's been unsuccessful. What do you think would allow it to be successful this time around? And what should the mayor and city hall's role be in moving this forward?
Oh, the development of an actual process, you know, the intention behind, again, like Ted said, it's easy to put something on paper, but we actually have that intentional delivery of those resources to communities. I think within our first 100 days, once we're elected in January of 2021, reconnecting with those communities that have been on the front line for so long and building that blueprint so that we can start moving forward, putting some dates on the calendar for goals, setting up our kiosk in the different communities so that we can start spreading out information about what we want these commissions to actually do in those neighborhoods and how we want them to fortify the information that we need in City Hall to develop the information we need for this review. I mean, I think that that's the first thing, is actually deliberately going out into communities and building up that communication model. We haven't done that yet. We've heard it during the election seasons, but it hasn't been anything that we've talked about to people. We've been knocking on doors for 18 months. People still don't understand what it means, how it would benefit us. And so we have to start somewhere, and I think that's the beginning. We can't talk about it. Let's say that the framework has to begin in the first 100 days of 2021.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mayor Wheeler, would you like to go next?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Cirilda. So I think something has fundamentally changed. And what's changed is the city has become more diverse, and people are more concerned about having a say in their local elected politics. I've always maintained that the commission form of government actually stands in the way of participation. Consider this fact. There are 3 women currently serving on the Portland City Council. 3 women together. They make up a majority of the council. They are 3 of the 8 women who have ever served on the city council in the entire history of the city. And even fewer people of color have served on the council. And part of the reason is you could be the best advocate for outer Cully. You could know the issues, you could have the partnerships, you could be super sharp about it. But the reality is, because you have to run citywide, it dilutes your message and it dilutes your experience. So the representation piece is what's going to make a difference. Technology will too. Right now you have 26 bureaus. They all do their own purchasing of software packages. We're trying to change that, but there's a lot of legacy systems that don't communicate from one bureau to the other. That's just ridiculous in an information age. So I just think that fundamentally the environment's shifted. People are ready for a new form of government.
Thank you. And Sarah?
I'm excited about a lady mayor. No, sincerely though, well, I am, but we have to think about it again in terms of what are we trying to accomplish. This is the kind of situation where bold leadership and a vision of the future is going to matter. Looking at what's broken isn't enough to get us where we need to be. We need to tap into the things that are working. I was supporting the Portland Clean Energy Fund before it was cool. Engaging community groups with deep roots in our neighborhoods, in our organizations, in our workforce, so they're shaping a government that works for them, as opposed to the government as we have it now, which works for the most affluent, which works for the most empowered, which works for existing cliques, if you will, and groups who have hoarded institutional power over time. I'm very grateful for public financing of my campaign, which is already breaking down the barriers for someone like me who lives in a neighborhood where the nickname was Felony Flats, and I'm not supposed to be able to run for mayor and compete with people who come from deep pockets and broad institutional networks. So there are little things that we can do in addition to the form of government that are going to help us change this. It's going to be how we vote and how we measure votes. Do we need some sort of ranked choice or star voting? Do we need to think about participatory budgeting? Do we need to think about the technology that Mayor Wheeler references and talk about how can we make sure that we're communicating effectively with the mayor, the auditing that Teressa Raiford talks about, and how are we making sure that we're holding our bureau managers accountable is all going to be very important. So, yeah, thank you.
Yes. Okay. So I think are going to get through one more question before we get to the break. And that's like a 15-second break. So the next question, Teressa, I'm going to bring you in first. And it's about professionals of color. I've lived in Portland for 14 years. I've raised my children here. My family and friends are here. Since my arrival, I have heard about and had more diversity, equity, and inclusion discussions than any other place on earth that I've either visited or lived in. The challenges of recruiting and retaining families and people of color in Portland is a fact that is widely known. Why do you believe Portland struggles to retain people of color? And what will you do as mayor to address this challenge?
Okay, so for the 4 generations that I've been alive and through all of the work that I do in the city archives to research why certain policies exist and why such framework exists in the procurement of people of color, and even that POC becoming a term that can be commodified, we haven't learned how to involve people and to include people without the exploitation tool. And in exploitation, there's never a system in which that value is enriching or development of a program or a tool for equity. It's only in alignment so that it can show that it's equitable. And people call that out. If you bring somebody here from Texas or Louisiana and they're working like within our school system or within our city government, and they're realizing that they don't actually have the political power or the manageable power or the supervisory power to create or to commit to what equity is supposed to be in regards to race, that they're literally there to kind of de-escalate any kind of litigation or mitigation because of race. That becomes a problem because in our own value system, we know what wrong is wrong. As Black women, when we're being utilized, when we're being exploited, we know when it's wrong. And to have the power play of the word equity in so many systems that involve us and to not be able to see a return on investment, what means some type of sort of support for us when we're injured by discrimination. That is the biggest problem. And they haven't ruled out exploitation.
Thank you very much. Okay, so Sarah, would you like to go next?
Use that tool.
Thank you so much. And I, of course, defer to women of color like you and Teressa in this instance in terms of what's going to be important for you, of course, to succeed in this environment. And I'm grateful, Cyrilda, for your work in City Hall and also at Prosper Portland. We often look at diversity, equity, and inclusion in Portland, I think, as a burden, something to be borne, and really we need to see it as an opportunity. When you look at things that cities like Pittsburgh have been able to do through their Vibrant Pittsburgh program, where it's not just the recruitment of professionals, not just Black professionals, but professionals of color, into their workforce, first starting with the city, but then around their region, through mentorship programs, through continuing education, through making sure that people are not left out of the culture of the place and that people aren't feeling displaced. We're actually seeing out-migration of mid-range professionals of color in Portland because of the culture here and because of the culture of white supremacy and how that shapes how things go down here. And there are some things that we have to think of as well, like displacement and access to economic opportunity that are built into our system. I've proposed a policy that I'm calling my 30-30-30 plan, which is actually focusing on increasing the wealth of Black Portlanders by 30% by age 30. Because what we know is that we have to start chipping away at this problem when people are young so they can actually be central to our community even as they age. So it's not a down the road thing, but we're doing it right now.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Ozzie, why do you believe Portland struggles to retain people of color, and what would you do as mayor to address that challenge?
Thank you. This is very near and dear to me as a professional of color. I have a lot of not only firsthand stories about the challenges of having positions here within the city of Portland, but I have many friends from the architecture profession, from medicine, from policy analysts from DC that have come to Portland with fantastic resumes and have not necessarily been able to be received. It's a lot easier to get a job as a professional of color in Portland if you land the job before you show up. If you show up here trying to find a position, it's very difficult to be fully seen through the human resources process. And I know that there's a lot of layers through getting through that filter. We still have a lot of unconscious bias in our region that stems from a long history of being very intentional in keeping people away. This was a place that was by design structured to not have people of color live here and thrive here for so long. It's new for many people to actually participate in a world, but Portland, the world has shown up, and many of them have come with fantastic backgrounds, ready to contribute to this city, and coming here because they already love what we stand for. I believe that by acknowledging lived experience as something worth putting onto a resume, and by looking at language access as the tip of the spear and making sure that the agency has more language capacity and that is normalized, that's the beginning of us being able to see each other in a fuller way. So I want to make sure that language access is a top priority of my administration and that we're putting lived experience as something just as valuable as an engineering degree.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mayor Willard.
I've spent a considerable part of my administration trying to overcome what I would describe as a legacy of institutional racism and white supremacy. And you'll recall when I took office, the first thing I did was I hired a staff, and I wanted to make sure that my staff was reflective of the community that we served. It was majority people of color. In fact, it was majority women of color. My chief of staff was the first African-American male to ever serve in that capacity. We made sure that we brought in leaders like Chief Outlaw. And some of you may recall that the job description I put, the very first sentence, was you need to understand the history of racism in Portland and what it means today, what the legacy of that racism means today in terms of policing. And I was called out as accusing the police bureau of being racist, which I was not. Then my first State of the City speech, I talked about and laid out the historic racism in our community. And I did it because I needed the majority to understand that that history is not gone. It is still with us today. And that's the leadership I've provided. Now, you asked, why don't people stay? And the answer is because we don't support them. We're really good at recruiting people of color, and we're lousy at creating the support infrastructure to keep them here. And that's something that I spent a lot of time talking with our leaders of color at the city of Portland. We have not identified all the solutions, but it's an ongoing process, and it's important community-wide.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so we are now at the time where we're going to accept and take in some questions from the public. So for those of you just joining in, this is City Club of Portland coming to you with our virtual debate for Portland Mayor. I'm your moderator, Cyrilda Summers McGee. Support City Club with a donation now by texting Support City Club to 44321. Again, by texting Support City Club, one word, to 44321, so that we can keep bringing you this important election coverage. We will now take questions we've received from the public, and I'm going to those questions now that City Club has been putting together for me. Okay, so the first question I'm going to ask you all is, this person says, I would like to hear from each candidate about what they will do in the first 100 days of being mayor to curb climate change in our city. Let's begin with, who are we on now? Mayor Willard.
Well, first of all, we're going to continue the action that we've already done. You'll recall we brought back the fossil fuel infrastructure ordinance. I promised I would. It was remanded back to the city. I said we'd pass it in a capacity where it would not be remanded again. We did, to stop the expansion of fossil fuel storage and transportation through our community and reduce the number of oil trains going through the gorge and through our city. We're on our path towards 100% renewable energy. There's a lot of work that I want to continue to do there. We passed the Clean Air Construction Standard and funded it. That's going to be expanded. We passed the single-use plastics ordinance, so there wouldn't be a lot of plastic in our waterways and our public right-of-ways. We can expand that as well, and I look forward to doing that. I look forward to working with Commissioner Yu Daly on expanding Central City in Motion and the Rose Lane program, improving bikeways, walkways, and transit in our community. And obviously, I still have yet to deliver on the residential infill program. We want smaller, more walkable, more bikeable, more livable, more compact communities, and RIP is critical to that. So I want to see that done, hopefully before the first 100 days of my next administration.
All right, and so Mayor Wheeler, you're going to step out and hit some pots against.
I'm going to go out and hit some pots. And
I think that's what's going to happen to celebrate those who are supporting us in our response to COVID-19. So I'm now going to go to the next question, and you'll rejoin us when you return. Ozzie, will you please go next?
Sure thing. Thank you for asking this. I'm going to walk into this position with the ability to bring clarity into what we've got to do. So I'm going to walk in drawing some lines right out the gate. We have to be clear about the vision we're going to arrive to. So I'm going to draw the line on creating a zero waste city, a zero fossil carbon industry, and making sure that we begin the inventory process to see how close we are to getting there today. In the future, we need to have 100% renewable energy sources that are being produced and distributed right here in Portland companies. We need to have local companies not only producing fuels, but vehicle technology as well. All of these things that we're going to do to transform the built environment as we know it today, down to the molecule, is going to mean that we have to partner with the educational system as well as the industry community so that we can have pipelines for innovation and commercialization of the next generation of solutions for the sustainable economy. Drawing that line today and not saying it's got to be 20 years or 10 years from now, saying we need to do this now, and the fact that we haven't done it by yesterday means we have a lot of work to do. So I want to say it's go time.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up, let's have Sarah.
Thank you. I'm the only candidate who's forwarded actually a comprehensive Green New Deal for Portland, and I did that as my first policy all the way back in October of 2019. I believe it's so critical, and I think it's kind of funny to listen to Ted Wheeler talk about what he's going to do when we've actually been working on these things long before he got into office. He's made a lot of it more difficult, things like residential infill project. You know, Minneapolis got that in and out the door in 3 years, and it's dragged through a lack of leadership. We need to have someone who has a clear understanding of what the community is interested in, how we can bring the community together on this, the right values, practical experience, and professional know-how to lead us on realizing a Green New Deal for our city. There are so many things that in that first 100 days we need to do. We're still waiting on a climate emergency declaration in the 4th year of the Wheeler administration. It's completely unacceptable. I've been endorsed by the Sunrise Youth Movement, in large part because Mayor Wheeler has locked them out of his office. And so what I am doing right now is crafting good urban sustainability policy with climate youth in my policy advisory groups. We need to make sure that we are centering the right voices, youth, communities of color, frontline communities in the dismantling of fossil fuel infrastructure, creating new green collar jobs to make sure that our communities are funded as we make the transition away from fossil fuels, making sure that we're getting minority-owned contracting businesses into the front line when it comes time to reform our economy, and then moving boldly in those first 100 days of implementing what it's going to take for us in that framework of putting the Green New Deal for Portland into place.
Thank you very much, Sarah. So, Teressa?
Thank you. Okay, thank you. And my daughter put up a timer for me because I still didn't get that part fixed. I just wanted to say that what we're going to do is in the first 100 days, we're going to go ahead and connect with our community partners. We're going to connect with the unions. We're going to connect with our educators and our community that's working towards vocational training and talk to them about the science of the Green New Deal. We want to start building in the engineering for not only forecasting what we're going to do about climate change, but to also build in that infrastructure and to utilize the people in our communities looking for opportunities at long-term sustainable jobs. I believe that we need to utilize the solar panel systems, but I also believe that if we don't invest in our education system, that because we do lead the nation with unhoused children, and we are leading the nation in children that are not graduating from high school, that we won't have a way for them to participate in a Portland that moves forward and that puts a green climate ahead of schedule to help us ensure that that happens. One of the things that we're seeing right now across the world is that the fact that cars are not being utilized, that they're non-essential, that our pollution issues are being identified, and that we're being able to see that those things are being stagnated. And that's good for us. So what we do need to do is we need to look at how we're engineering and how we're surviving and use those critical skill sets that we're developing and start building forward. We don't have to say that we have to make things like big freeways available to us, but we do have to maintain air quality for our future. We do have to make sure that we have sustainable growth in our community that entitles all of us to be participants in what that looks like for people in Portland. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to go to the next question that we have. And this is a yes or no question. Oh gosh, did I lose it? Okay, I found it. Yes or no? Please answer this question. Do you support sweeps? Let's begin with Sarah.
Unequivocally, I do not support the involuntary displacement of our unhoused Portlanders, also known as sweeps. It's a human rights abuse, and it's dangerous. They kill. And right now, we are supposed to be in a moratorium of sweeps. According to the CDC, our city finally has acknowledged that these are dangerous and harmful practices. And I'm hearing reports that sweeps are underway. And so I would actually like to hear from the incumbent how, if he's not supporting sweeps at this time, he plans to stop them, because I'm getting multiple reports every single day on social media that sweeps are going on even when they're supposed to be a ban in place.
Okay, thank you. Next up, Mayor Wheeler. Do you support sweeps, yes or no?
I think I'm going to give a little more than a yes or no, just given the precedent set there. First of all, let's acknowledge that there are some camps that are set up in places that are not safe for the inhabitants. They can potentially create a public health hazard to the people who live there and to others, and they can create a public safety hazard to themselves and others. So yes, if there's a homeless camp shoved up next to a building where people are lighting fires and creating a hazard, that camp will be moved. But during this COVID crisis, we have virtually suspended all camp cleanups per the CDC guidance, except in cases where the camp is in a place where people are in direct danger. For example, in the middle of a traffic circle. It is not humane to let somebody camp in the middle of a traffic circle if we know that cars run through that traffic circle.
So, Mayor Wheeler, am I muted? No, I'm not. Mayor Wheeler, I'm just going to ask the question one more time. Do you support sweeps, yes or no?
Yes, I guess I do. I support sweeps when life, safety, the environment, and public health are at risk. Yes.
Thank you. Ozzie.
The sweeps that we have going on today don't work. I don't support the sweeps that we have going on today because we're just sweeping around. There is no place to send people to. So I reiterate the importance of making sure that the humane thing is not only to remove people from safe situations, but to send them to a safe situation. So this is a beginning of a story without an end. It's a total cliffhanger. I am not interested in supporting the way we're going about it today.
Thank you. So you do not, so that's no.
I do not support the sweeps Portland is doing.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Teressa.
Yes, I don't support sweeps. Back in 2011, I helped advocate for people. I asked them to file complaints with the Independent Police Review because when they were being swept out of camps, they were losing their belongings. And when we talk about the people that live outside that are unhoused, we did an audit. Our city did an audit last year, and it showed that the people that are unhoused are our children. There are elderly people, their families. We have to start being more humane with who we're talking about. We have 16,000 empty units in the city of Portland. We see hotels that are opening their doors to our most disenfranchised, unhoused communities. If our city doesn't have the smart planning and the courage as leaders to do something that attacks this crisis of unhoused community members, this is going to be something that we're known for. I mean, for generations right now. For me, just having grandchildren, I don't want them to get used to being around our community where we know that it's unsafe for people to have to live outside. It's not that the camp is unsafe. It's that the fact that they're living outside, the fact that there are critical people with disabilities and really serious issues living outside with no intake services, with no compassion, with no accessibility to the 16,000 empty units that we have. That's the problem. I think we need to start developing infrastructure. We need to invest in preservation, and we need to house people, not sweep them.
Okay.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Okay, so I have to ask a COVID-19 question. That'll be the last question that I ask from the questions we've received, and then we're going to proceed to closing comments. So here's the question I'm going to ask of all of the COVID questions that we received. The city has issued a variety of COVID-19 resources to help individuals, families, and businesses impacted by this global crisis. Is it enough? Do we need more? And if so, what more should city government do to better support our community? And I would like to open that question up with Ozzie.
Thank you. I was going to raise my hand. I believe there's a lot more we can do. Clearly, there's a lot of need for information right now. And we have a lot of folks in our community that are having a hard time getting that information. If you don't have internet, if you don't have a TV, if you don't have a home, if you don't speak English as a primary language, all of those communities are very difficult to reach. They also happen to present a risk for the health of the entire city. So now more than ever, we're seeing the importance of being able to get messaging out. So I've been working with some local community members that are in the media, that are local leaders that speak other languages than English, to start moving information out in other languages, trying to support. And this is a charge to our public agencies. And Ted, since you're on the call, I would say it's time to really make sure that the communication resources are even keeled here between English and other languages, because the quality factor, the content falls right off the cliff as soon as you leave one step away from English.
Okay, thank you. Teressa.
Yes, thank you for asking me that question. One of the things that we did this morning after we read the Oregonian article that came out about this stimulus is that we put out a petition on change.org asking the mayor and the city council to review what they put out as a process that's supposed to provide stimulus to our community. What they did was they basically projected opportunities for businesses over individuals, and they say that they're going to reach out to at least 2,000 Portlanders to make sure that they get up to $500. That's not enough. We put the petition on our website, Teressa Raiford for Mayor PDX, or for mayor.com, and we're asking people to review that petition. And if you're making under $75,000, we're asking the city of Portland to make sure that people get $1,000 so that they can take care of their needs, because the rent freeze only gives us debt. It doesn't relieve the issue or the obstacle of what's happening to us right now. And each person in each household has an intrinsic situation that's happening because of coronavirus. So we need to attach our stimulus to those type of insightful opportunities to kind of like take away that burden and let the city take that burden back.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, and I really want to speak to the thousands of Portlanders who are afraid of bleeding out right now. And it's time for us to think more like a wartime consigliere than a bureaucrat in this situation. We need to be far less risk averse in the short term and make sure that our people and our households are shored up for the month of April. We're headed into some very hard times. We need a moratorium on commercial evictions. There's nothing in place to protect our small business owners. We need a rent amnesty program for Portlanders. The moratorium is not enough. At the other side of this, we're going to have families drowning in debt. No one I know can afford 3 months, 6 months of deferred rent. It will bury people. We need to be thinking about basic services. The job of a mayor is to make sure our people have clean water, access to latrines, access to hand washing stations. I've been talking with people in Toronto right now. They just brought a $3 million class action lawsuit against Airbnb. We're seeing whole new units flooding the rental market because we've been under-regulating Airbnb. And I don't want that to be on the individual Airbnb hosts. I want that to be on the corporation. And this is where we need to start getting tough with corporate interests and make sure that all of our resources as Portlanders are going to the individual people here, the workers, especially those vulnerable frontline workers. And I just want to say I'm supporting all of the striking workers through this too. And I want to make sure that as a community, we're behind them if they do need to strike so that they have their bills taken care of too, even if it just means mutual support networks and no money from the city at all.
Thank you. Thank you. Mayor Wheeler.
Well, I appreciate the comments from my colleagues, and the good news is we're already doing a lot of the things that we can legally do. We actually are already ahead of the state and ahead of the federal government in terms of our own stimulus. We just redirected $1 million in the Housing Bureau to help 2,000 families with their immediate needs. So that could be rent, it could also be groceries, it could be medicine or other critical needs. With Prosper Portland, the council allocated $1 million towards small business and employer support. Prosper matched that, and working with some of the lending institutions in the community, we've secured an additional $1 million. So now we have $3 million to help some of the small businesses like the kind that Sarah was mentioning earlier. The $100 million we're expecting to get from the federal government, is it enough? Probably not. We don't know yet how we can actually spend it. The rulemaking won't come out till next week, but I'm hopeful we can expand the support for frontline employees, for people who have lost their jobs, for people who are at risk of losing their housing. And yes, Sarah and others, we are asking the state legislature to put a moratorium on commercial rent evictions. That's the state's prerogative, not the local government's. We did take that action for residential tenants, but the state legislature is going to have to act on the commercial side. We're working together with my colleagues on the city council, Joanne Hardesty in particular, and Commissioner Udaley, to ask the state legislature to take this up as part of their special session.
Thank you very much. And thank you to you all for just engaging with all the Q&A. You all did a great job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions today. Let's move to closing remarks. You will each have 2 minutes to share with our audience and voters why they should vote for you from Portland Mayor. Please, starting us out will be Sarah.
Start first and first. So thank you all. I appreciate you tuning in this difficult time. I know it's very hard to think about municipal politics when you're worried about how you're going to feed your families and pay your rent. I think it makes clear that this is no time for business as usual. We need a leader right now who has the practical life experience, the professional know-how, the community networks, and the deep understanding of how we can move our city through this crisis into a recovery, into an optimistic choice for the future. We have to understand that it's not going to take a moneyed elite from the West Hills to see us over this hump as we're crafting a new future. The status quo is not going to suffice. So what we need to think about, my publicly financed campaign has allowed me to connect with thousands of donors across the city who are mobilized at this time to help us not only get us through this crisis, but to help us build the politics of the future. A Green New Deal for Portland, a housing strategic plan, reforming public safety, which we did not talk about policing much here, but we've seen that having armed police officers in the streets is not what people need right now. They need care when they're in the streets. We haven't talked much about transportation, but we need someone who understands how compact walkable neighborhoods are built, how we can make sure that we have access to fareless transit for our workers, things like municipal broadband to households. We're looking at things. We knew telecommuting was one of our fastest growing mode splits that we had at our availability, and now it's come true. So what we need is a community leader who's tapped into all of these things, who can really present Portlanders a clear alternative to what we've had before. On the current watch of the mayor right now, things I think have gotten worse. If I thought they were getting better, I wouldn't need to run. And so my pitch to you is this: take a chance on someone who really can lead this city into the bold future that Portlanders deserve. I believe we deserve better. I believe that we can use the lessons from this COVID crisis to get us there. I want you to stay optimistic in these hard times. I know it is very tough. You can find out more information about me and my campaign at sarah2020.com. My name is Sarah Iannarone, and I would definitely like your vote on May 19th, 2020. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sarah. Next up, Teressa.
Thank you for having me. Thanks again to the moderators and everybody that's tuning in. This opportunity for me is just so valuable and so important. And I just wanted to take a moment to thank everybody who's been on my side, organizing with me, building up our community through this campaign. And when I say building up our community, I'm talking about the survey that we put out that says what matters to you. I'm talking about the 18 months that Special and other people spent knocking on doors throughout the community, even when nobody even, thought that the first campaign was over because Ted had just started his job as our mayor. For all the people who have, for generations, put so much time and energy into commitments and volunteer work in this city because they believed that Portland was a progressive place that we could all be committed to making better. I just want them to know that I'm doing this for them. I don't have any kind of ego when it comes to leadership or in a position of service. I am known as a public servant. I call myself an advocate because I don't mind showing up and I don't mind doing the work to support our community. But if I become the mayor in the city of Portland, what that means for us is there's going to be a bridge. There's going to be a bridge that's developed that basically inspires and encourages people who have felt out of the loop, who have felt disenfranchised. And when their commitment to engagement builds in prosperity for this city, all of us will benefit from that. It's time for change. It's time for radical change. It's time for a commitment that we can count on from leaders that we elect. And I'm ready to bring that change forward. Please check out the People's Platform. It was developed because of the interaction that we've had with people in our community. Go to Teressa RaifordForMayor.com. Also check out our petition. Look at information on there. Contact me. All this time that we have left now in the city, being able to platform from our homes, contact me anytime. I love doing these video chats. My daughter set it up for me. We got a good scene. Thank you for your time and commitment. Everybody make sure you're registered to vote and vote May 19th. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teressa. Next up, Mayor Wheeler.
Well, this has been fun. Thank you all for doing it. Thanks to the City Club. Thanks to you again, Cyrilda. And certainly thanks to my opponents, to Ozzie, to Teressa, to Sarah, thank you. You always create a lively discussion, and I appreciate it. And I especially want to thank the public who turned out, even on this alternative format. I think it's been terrific. From my perspective, this is a very important election. And if the COVID crisis teaches us anything, it's that this is a time for leadership. This is not a time to experiment or flip over the apple cart again. Because frankly, that's what we've been doing every 4 years since the beginning of this century. We've been changing administrations every 4 years. And that means we change the dynamics on the city council, we change priorities, we change leadership amongst our bureaus, we disrupt hard-fought connections in the community that the city's worked hard to develop. And frankly, I think the rotating mayors over the last 20 years has been a disservice to this community. So I want to build on the successes that we've started. As I said, this isn't about me, this is about us coming together to get stuff done. And we are. In this time of leadership, I'm going to tell you, there's never an either or, a yes or no. Do you support sweeps or don't you support sweeps? It's always the nuances. Under what circumstances would you? The reason that I'm running for mayor is because I want to build on that legacy. I'm not the only one. My colleagues want me to come back. Commissioners Fritz, Commissioner Hardesty have endorsed my campaign. The employees of the city of Portland through their labor unions have endorsed me. The firefighters, AFSCME, SEIU, the building trades, the Northwest Labor Council, IBEW, UFCW. Lynn Peterson, the president of Metro, wants to continue to work with me. Tina Kotek, the Speaker of the Oregon House, has endorsed my campaign because she wants to continue our relationship. And yes, representatives from frontline communities, people like Avell Gordley, Margaret Carter, Janelle Bynum, and others have supported this campaign. I'm asking you, Portland, to give me that opportunity to be the first mayor this century to stick to the job. Vera was mayor for 12 years. I've been mayor for just over 3. I've got a lot of work ahead of me, and I want to do it with you. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Ted Willard. Ozzie, you're up.
Thank you very much, and thanks once again to City Club and to everyone out there putting a little time and energy into our democracy this year. I know that we are struggling and we have a lot of real challenges in front of us. I don't have to explain to you how much livability has changed over the last few years. I don't have to explain to you how much we have seen our city struggling to keep up with these challenges. And I know that we can do so much better. We had an opportunity to do so much better years ago had we been able to confront these challenges and listen to the voices that were being trying to be heard years back. And now, 3.5 years in, it's a little bit too late to try to continue to listen and try to build off of that. I think we can do so much better. And even though our challenges are real, I know that they are not insurmountable. We have an opportunity to create a city that can live up to that promise of being a global example of sustainability and of actually bringing equity and inclusion into the fold. We're not going to address those issues with the same thinking that got us to this point. We need different lived experience. We need different lived perspectives to be able to do this. Representation matters. And Portland, you have an opportunity in this cycle to choose a leader that represents another perspective. I could be the first bilingual mayor and someone with a background in environmental science, architectural design, and sustainability at the scale that Portland aspires to go to. We have an opportunity to reach amazing levels of innovation in our city, but we need those leaders that can build the coalition. I am, by my nature, a bridge builder, a coalition builder, and a team leader. I have a vision that is just crazy enough to be bold, of a sustainable city with zero waste and zero carbon in our entire system. But I know it's not insurmountable because it's being done out there. This is all technically feasible. We need the political will and the human spirit. And I want to lead us in that direction. Ozzie Gonzalez, I would love to be our next mayor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ozzie. I appreciate it. Okay. Our time is up. Thank you so much, candidates Ozzie Gonzalez, Sarah Iannarone, Teressa, Raiford, and Mayor Ted Willard for joining us today. And thank you all for joining online and joining us online from home. Thank you again to today's sponsor, the Standard and SEIU 49. As I mentioned, civic engagement is more important than ever. If you appreciate this programming and are not yet a member of City Club, I want to invite you to join us. Everyone has a seat at our table. Our regular membership rate is $165 a year, but given these unparalleled circumstances and the critical importance of civic engagement in historic moments like these, if you join now, you get a discounted membership rate of only $96 a year, or join, or just $8 a month. Just go to pdxcityclub.org and sign up for membership and use the promo code CivicsMatter. You can also support City Club by making a donation today, whatever you can give. Text Support City Club, one word, to 44321. Support City Club, one word, 44321. Let's all work together to keep democracy moving forward. Whether you are a member or just thinking about becoming one, we encourage you to ask questions by emailing questions at pdxcityclub.org or on social media using hashtag CityClubDebate. Let's find out what's possible when we truly make space for everyone to connect, share ideas, and build a future together. Thank you, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.